I'm trying to eat them before they go to waste, and proven to be difficult. So I'm with you on this.
Yeah.
It's a tough sell.
Yeah. There's a strategy that I'm sure some people enlist outside of dropping them off at neighbors' doorsteps for those crops that are really prolific. So when you hit the Seminole pumpkin lottery, right? You've had this with butternut squash before,
Hmm.
cucumbers, zucchini, if they don't, succumb to, that little bastard. Like these are things that are truly, truly prolific. And some of these things aren't the easiest to consume, like, every day, every week, or whatever have you. So that's something to be said. I don't know. I haven't decided where I'm going to land for cucumbers this year.
Right.
I'm kind of not going to make a big deal out of it, but I'm also kind of like, there's a lot of time. I spent more time tasting cucumbers that were bitter than I
Yeah.
probably did doing anything in the garden. So there's that.
What
So yeah,
variety
that's a
did you
little bit of
grow?
a womp womp. I think I just need to look at that goal and maybe refine it a little bit more.
What variety did you grow?
I did the national pickling cucumber, and I did a kind of slender Japanese style cucumber. I can't remember the variety. And then I did one kind of random hybrid. And we had mentioned it. You probably heard it, or maybe you didn't hear it. I did everything from harvesting them really small. I found that they tasted much better when I did a deep watering, and then like within the next week, I picked cucumbers. Right when the weather cooled off, when we had that weird bit in Chicago of like October was super mild. I had blossoms in October and cucumbers produced. All of those were just fine, were crisp. But again, think about how the weather is like really mild,
Yeah.
right? There's no real hot heat coming in, right? So yeah, I mean, across the varieties, the only ones that I didn't get that were like the slender Japanese cucumbers were never bitter. That's the only one. And I did. Oh yeah, I did
Winner,
also
winner,
did a
chicken dinner.
the straight eight too.
Yeah, and that worked out all right.
No, all of them had a bout of bitter besides the Japanese style one.
Okay.
And I noted before, now I don't know which parts the folks didn't hear it or did hear, but I'll wrap it up here. I have never had this ever in my garden before.
Yeah, I don't like national pickling cucumbers. I've grown them,
Yeah,
and they're
that sounds familiar.
way too susceptible to pests. So
All
I
right,
just move
let's
on.
move on to a goal that I'm confident that you hit. All right, minimize the dearth. And I asked you in the episode like three times what the hell that word was. And then I still had, when you said it, I still had to look it up on the internet when I was listening back to the episode. So litter for me put in parentheses dry spell. Dearth, Dearth. You even spelled it. I'm still like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. So
Yeah.
dry spell. These are your
So
quick notes. Recognize a need for this last year. So in 2023, you recognize a need for it. I'll shorten this. The whole time period was spring and early fall. The end of spring and early fall had been periods of time where you had probably less than you'd like in the garden.
yeah. So if you don't know what a dearth is a period where you don't get a harvest. We use that term for the bees. There's no nectar. There's no food. It's called a dearth. It's called the nectar dearth. So we definitely in the spring we hit it pretty good. Uh, I'm trying to think back. The only hiccup in the spring was we had this raccoon that just kept eating our tomatoes. So that was an issue. But outside of that, we were able to harvest from, we were able to consume from our garden from, I'd say, late February all the way up until, this is a hard one, I'd say about July before things started getting a little bit weird, maybe even August. And then it fell off. So a lot of things happened this year. And, one thing that's important to realize with all of this stuff is sometimes it's out of your control. And that's exactly what happened here. We had basically the only time we got rain this summer and even in the fall is when a tropical system came by. And so we would get huge amounts of rain and then we get absolutely nothing. And this was the first time in a long time that I've actually seen my grass brown in the summer. So, we literally didn't get much rain at all. So that made it a little bit difficult. And then the heat kind of persisted. And so in the fall, what ended up happening was we would break down. Um, I'm trying to think. We had two beds of corn. One bed failed. The other bed was popcorn. So I'm not even going to count it because what the hell am I going to do with some popcorn? I won't be growing that again. And it's not popping quite right. The kernels didn't mature as good like they were supposed to. So we got a little bit greedy and said, hey, we're going to leave some stuff in. And I did something too in the year where I was testing monocropping across the board. And I monocropped all beds, and it didn't really work out like I wanted it to. So we had some failures in there, specifically our pepper bed ended up kind of failing on us to an extent. I mean, we got harvest off of it, but it didn't last. Usually our peppers will go from spring all the way up into fall, and it didn't happen this year, and that was because of the monocrop, I'm fairly certain. So when I say dearth, what I don't mean an absolute feast, like breaking the dearth with a feast. What I mean is harvesting something and, eating a couple peppers a week or something. And really that didn't work out because we had those key crops not make it. We didn't do a fall tomato planting, which was a mistake. Our peppers didn't do great, but we did have Seminole pumpkins producing all the way through. And not to mention, another thing that happened was our black-eyed peas were on our back trellis. And I've had this notion for a couple years again that it just doesn't get enough sun. And that was absolutely the case. So we eliminated our black-eyed peas that we would be getting. So with all that said, there were some hiccups. But in the grand scheme of things, we made 50% of it, which, if I'm going to give myself a letter grade here, I can't give myself a 50%. You know what I'm saying? Like, we actually eliminated part of this dearth period. So, I'd say it's probably about a C I would give myself. But it's definitely tricky to do it because... And I wrote this note earlier for a show that we'll end up doing, I'm sure. But when we're planting a garden, the harvest days to harvest matters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we need to understand. And I definitely want to dive into that a little bit more and how I plan to, and hopefully Batavia will be down. We'll discuss it later. But apply this to our garden and make a change. And we're working on that, but yeah, we missed the buck. We went solid probably